Okay, Sean Baker, welcome to Utah Valley University.
Thanks for having me.
We just watched Tangerine. Guys, what'd you think? Thanks for joining us. This is awesome.
Sure.
I've got a couple questions for you to start things off.
Okay.
I've been asking you a lot of questions over the past few days, so I feel like I've asked a lot, and I'm gonna ask you one that's really obvious that everybody asks you every time they interview you, and one that I meant to ask before that I didn't have time to. So first off, tell us where Tangerine came from and how you happened upon your two lead actresses.
Okay. It's a long answer, but I'll try to make it brief. I was setting down the road of making another film after Starlet, and it was I was working with a producer who wanted to go about it with the old school way, you know, getting an A-list actor and looking for a big budget, 15 million to tell you, to be specific. And it wasn't happening. You know, the industry is up and down right now, and it was very difficult to try to attach A-listers to this script without having financing, and it was very difficult to get financing without having A-listers attached. So basically, it was just a cycle that kept going on for about a year and a half, and I was getting very frustrated. I thought I wouldn't make another film if I didn't make a move quickly. And I remembered that Mark Duplass and his brother Jay were fans of my film called Prince of Broadway 2 films back, and they had offered me a opportunity to work with them on a micro budget if I wished to. And to tell you the truth, I've now made, well, at the time I had made 4 micro budgets. I really didn't want to make another one. I knew the budget was going to be less than the film I had just made, Starlet. It was going to be less than half of even less than half of the budget of Starlet, which was $250,000. And but I was in a place where I had to do it. So I called up Mark and I said, is the offer still on the table? He said, of course. What is your idea? And of course I couldn't, share with him the idea that I was of this $15 million movie. It wasn't going to work for this budget. So what had been on my mind was this intersection that is about a half a mile from the place in which I live, the corner of Santa Monica and Highland. It's sort of an infamous, it's known as a red light district, a sort of an unofficial red light district that goes back for decades. Sorry about this siren. And that's all I had to say to Mark. He said, what's your idea? And I said, Santa Monica and Highland. And that I was basically green lit on that, he knows Los Angeles. He knew about the intersection. And so he said, okay, let's do it. And I said, sorry, it's very loud here. It's almost like New York City. LA. All right. So basically, I said, well, now I have to begin the immersion process, because that's basically what I do with every one of these films. And Chris Bergosh and I are 2 cisgender white guys from outside of that world. And we had we knew very little about it except what we had witnessed when driving by or walking by. So we knew at that point that was going to be at least another 6 months until we got into production, because we needed time to learn it and to feel confident enough that we had worked with the people from that community long enough to understand the community, long enough to then feel confident to write a feature fiction script based on stories and anecdotes that we heard. And part of this immersion process required finding people from that world to help us out, to basically be our passports to that world. And that was Maya Taylor. Maya Taylor was the first person we met that expressed enthusiasm. She was an aspiring entertainer at the time, focusing more on singing and music, but was totally into exploring the acting world. And actually she had taken one drama course in either junior high or high school. So it was something that at least she was thinking about. And so it wasn't I didn't have to convince her. She wanted to work on it. This time it was actually much easier for me to get people interested because I had DVDs of my previous work. In the past, especially with Prince of Broadway, which is a difficult one in which I was, approaching undocumented immigrants on the street and asking them to help me with a movie. They always thought I was a cop or a journalist. In this case, I was able to show that I was a legitimate filmmaker from the beginning by showing them my DVDs, and that really opened up doors. Maya Taylor liked Starlet a lot and understood my sensibility, and we were on the same page from almost day one. And we started hanging out at the local fast food restaurant here, a Jack in the Box to be specific. And I'm a vegetarian, so I just sat there and watched everyone eat. But Chris and I, we conducted interviews there, and more than just interviews, basically casual conversations. And one day Maya she would bring all of her friends to the restaurant and we would interview them. And all these stages of pre-production were sort of being blended together because we didn't have a script at this point. We had nothing. The only idea I had was that there was going to be a confrontation at donut time. That's it. That's really it. I mean, donut time was enough of a landmark and a hub that, a shelter, if you will, for the women who worked on the street, that we knew that would be a central location. But besides that, that was it. And so we were looking to hear a bunch of stories and also at the same time keep our eyes open for casting possibilities. And Maya was already somebody that we thought we would definitely cast. We had no idea how large her role would be or what sort of role it would be. And then she brought Kiki to the table one day, and I think this was about 2 weeks into this process, and Kiki sat down next to Maya at the restaurant, and the minute I saw them together, I thought, okay, now there's a dynamic duo thing going on here. They really complemented one another and contrasted one another, and there was a real understanding where they would set up each other's jokes and deliver punchlines on just on in the moment. It wasn't like they prepared for this. They were very fast and witty, and they had a lot to tell me about the area. And we knew from that moment on that we were going to have to write a script with 2 lead characters for these 2 women to play. So over the course of the next few weeks, and even maybe a month, we were looking for this A plot, something to really carry the whole film. I mean, it could have been a simple cinema verite character study sort of movie, and Mark and Jay would have been fine with that. But we were looking for something with a little bit of a hook. And one day, unfortunately, Kiki walked into the restaurant, and well, she's been open about this in the media, so I feel comfortable talking about it. But Kiki walked into the restaurant very upset, suspecting her boyfriend of having cheated on her with a cisgender woman, and we were talking it through that day and comforting her, etc. And it just became a moment where we thought, oh, this actually might turn into something where we can flesh this out into a fictionalized story of this, of what would happen. And because, Kiki is not anything like nothing like Cindy. She's actually quite introverted and shy, and she would never actually, go on a mission to find this woman, but she did fantasize about it for a moment while we were sitting there. And we just basically were throwing ideas around. We said, okay, so say this happened in real life, how would it play out? Where would you find her? And she said, well, she's a prostitute. She'd probably be at the local motel that's a makeshift brothel down the street. And, so we started fantasizing this through, and then the next thing you know, we had an A plot. And I think it was Chris who actually was the one who said this should be our A plot. Sorry, these dogs are.
That's all right. I'm interested. I've got your famous Chihuahua behind you.
Yeah, that's
Starlet, right?
Starlet, yeah. So anyway, that was basically it. We knew at that point that we had an A plot because it was going to take our characters on a journey through LA, which is what we wanted. We wanted to show LA. Most people know about LA in a car, and we wanted to get outside of a car and show that there's actually public transportation and other ways of getting around the city. And it was just a very layered, very, very layered in many ways as well. I mean, a trans woman having to deal with her boyfriend cheating on her with a cisgender woman. There was a lot there. And so we started fleshing this out into I'll wrap this up really quick, Duane, sorry. We basically got to the point where we said we're ready to write a treatment. And we said, oh, give us a week. And we walked away. We wrote up a treatment about 7 to 10 pages and returned and said, what do you think? Because I always wanted their approval on every step, every stage. I wanted their approval because, again, it's about representation. We wanted to do the responsible and respectful thing. And so they loved it, of course, but meaning, because they were part of it, but that last scene was something in which they said it's going to be difficult for them to do, but they understood why I wrote it, because I was watching their friendship over the course of our research, and it meant, and I saw how close what their sisterhood meant and the bond between these two, and not just those two, but their whole circle of friends, how they really didn't really have anybody else. Nobody else was really there for them. They had to rely on one another, and that became something that Chris and I said, this is going to be one of the key themes, friendship and sisterhood and what one would do for the other. And that's why we wrote that last scene. They said it was going to be difficult for them to perform, extremely difficult, because they would be stripping themselves naked, but they were willing to do it. That was their one major note. Besides that, they said, we love what we see, we love what we're reading. And we went, and then we fleshed it out into a scriptment. And by the time we shot, we were working with about a 65 to 70 page scriptment. We had time to do workshopping, and that's what convinced me that the girls were wonderful actresses. And we shot around the Christmas season of 2013 going to 2014 to take advantage of the existing Christmas decorations, because literally that was the sort of budget we couldn't production design. And that's about it. Then we premiered about a year later at Sundance.
You brought up the term scriptment, which one of the questions I had for you before. Can you explain to us what a scriptment is?
Well, basically, it's just half a treatment, half a script. I sometimes, but we do write it in final draft. So it is screenplay formatted, but sometimes it'll get to a section. I'm working on one right now, actually. And so what the new film. So basically, sometimes, now this isn't in final draft. This is me just typing it up in Google Drive. But sometimes I'll have it all the dialogue fleshed out. And that is then on set, we will encourage improvisation based on that dialogue. Then other times you'll come across just a paragraph that says, the characters talk about these subjects. And then those will be kept to the looser days, the days in which we have more time on set. And there will be basically improv workshops as we're shooting and fleshing it out with all of us. So that's basically what a scriptment is. It's around, ours come in usually at around 70 pages.
And you've done that for all of your main features?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because I actually do have full screenplays. Those just haven't been produced. Like the one that I needed, for the $15 million one was a 120-page screenplay. Yeah, I just haven't had those produced.
Okay, so that actually leads into another question, because you use very seasoned actors, you use new actors, like you've referred to Kiki and Maya as being, I think in our previous conversations, not being non-actors, but being like new actors or something.
Yeah,
And
I divide actors into 3 categories: non-professionals, first-timers, and seasoned actors. And basically, I consider Kiki and Maya first-timers because they were both aspiring actually, I forgot to mention this, but the whole reason that Maya brought Kiki to the restaurant that day is because she considered her like the thespian. You know, she actually studied more drama in high school. So, but then there are the non-professionals. Non-professionals are people that we basically just grab off the street, or like friends of ours who aren't actors, and never, and after we wrap that day, that'll be probably the last time they act. But
how do you work with those people to keep them from acting and to be natural?
Well, they still have to. There's either full manipulation, where you don't even tell them the cameras are rolling sometimes, and you just, you know, have your seasoned actors sort of guiding them in a way through their, you know, they're in character and they're in the scene. And then there are other times where you get somebody who just is a natural, and just you're very surprised by how much they bring to the table. It's always, for me, about keeping it casual, keeping it small, and removing pressure and intimidation. And then the non-professionals, if they feel they're in a casual, no pressure situation, it really does work miracles. That's a lot. I think the iPhone had a lot to do with that. You know, the iPhone never came across as professional. So therefore, people were way more, you know, naturalistic, and they're just being themselves.
Okay, great. Then one last question. You worked with a lot of actors over and over. You have sort of an ensemble in many ways. Tell me about, when you find an actor who you want to keep working with, what are some of the qualities that you're finding in him or her, such as Karam, right?
Yeah.
And Mickey, right? I mean, both of them have been in several things, and just what is it that you find in these people that makes you go to them again and again?
You know, they're just,
other than the fact that they're willing to work for literally nothing.
Yeah. Well, basically, I feel as if you know, you find people you like to work with for multiple reasons. I think that for actors, you know, they have a persona, they have that appeal that you just want to keep watching. So, you know, I found with Colin, I'm always drawn to him. Every second he's on screen, I feel like there's just something about this guy that I want to watch, no matter what sort of character he's playing. And he has great range, you know, he's wonderful. So he can play, you know, different sorts of characters, and I'm always convincing. Same with Mickey. And also, you know, another thing is that I do encourage improvisation, as I said, and to find people who can do that, that's, you know, that's a skill that you're born with. I think, you know, it's a genius to a certain degree. And Maya and Kiki have it. You know, Maya and Kiki have that gift where they can they feel comfortable enough with going off page and just and Dree Hemingway and Starlet had that. She didn't care at all whether, you know, she would throw out a line, and if it bombed, it bombed. Who cares? You know, she didn't feel in any way embarrassed. She would just be okay. And actually, she would sometimes say that. She would say, "Oh, that line sucked. All right, let's try that again." You know, it was when actors are comfortable enough to do that, it's amazing. And I've been lucky enough to find this really great group of people who can do that. There are other actors who can't, and that's fine. That's their style. And then with those actors, you know, we usually have more on the page for them. You know, we have dialogue scripted out for them, and they don't have to waver from that if they don't want it.
How much rehearsal do you do normally before you start shooting?
Well, it really depends. Karin didn't have much because he was living in New York, and he just came in and did this Razmik character with like maybe a day or two of prep. But then all the others did have rehearsals, and I would say several, I don't know how many, but several days of workshopping and rehearsing. And it really varies from film to film. My first film, Four Letter Words, was done from what I've read, very much like a Mike Lee-ish type of, you know, Mike Lee, the British social realist filmmaker. He does these workshops where they start with almost nothing, and then they flesh these scenes out, and they're being videotaped if that's still a term, videotape, and then the best of gets transcribed and made into a script. And that's what I did with my first film. I had days and days, months of workshopping and rehearsing. So it really depends on the film.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to this group, and they'll come up, they'll say their name, and ask you some questions. Are you?
Okay. Okay. And sometimes, by the way, I don't like rehearsals because rehearsals can kill the spontaneity. So sometimes even, you know, some people who are coming from a very, very, I would say, conventional, like a television shoot in which, you know, you have the whole, you know, let's block it, let's rehearse it, let's do our first run through, let's shoot. You know, sometimes I throw that stuff out the window and it kind of bothers people who are too used to a system. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
You're okay. Hello.
How are you?
My name's Brian, and I'm a film major here at UVU, and thank you very much for coming. I've seen your movie 3 times. I saw it in theaters twice. So
thank you very much. I appreciate
that. So as well as being a film major here, I'm also very heavily involved in the queer and trans community here in Utah Valley. A lot of people don't think there is a queer or trans community here in Utah Valley, but there is. And anyways, I'm working on an essay right now talking about trans representation in movies and television. And I was wondering your opinion. Your movie obviously uses actual trans women, but a lot of Hollywood movies actually cast like big name actors, usually cis men, to play trans women. And I was just wondering your opinion on that, whether you think it's beneficial representation of the trans community or whether it's detrimental to cast cis men.
It's complicated. It's definitely complicated. It's just that I feel as if Hollywood and the industry in general can just be a little lazy sometimes, you know, in their, first off, you have to look at where we are, 2015, 2016. We are in a place where the trans people haven't had the same opportunities. They're usually just struggling to survive, especially in my case where I was using trans women of color who come from poverty. They're basically just trying to survive. They don't have reels, headshots. They're not out there. They don't have agents, managers. So I feel it's really up to the industry to search, to look, you know, to look outside the normal circles. Now, then the argument can be made, oh, well, we need to put a star in here or we won't, there's no box office draw. And what are we going to do? Well, you know what? I mean, there's always the supporting characters that you can pump up with A-listers to support somebody new, to support a fresh face, to bring trans talent into the industry. They're not going to just walk in. You know, the industry is the one that's going to have to, you know, to welcome. And my hope is that, you know, as these projects like Tangerine, projects like, you know, Transparent, you know, and just in general, they don't have to be trans themed either. But if there's a trans character, maybe right now it's the, you know, it would be just an ethical choice on the industry's part to seek out and to cast trans talent because it's out there and it's obvious it's out there. I mean, Maya just won the Spirit Award and it was an incredible moment for us. And for us, that was like mission accomplished. You know, we did something with our film that was meaningful. You know, it put Maya on the map, put Kiki on the map, and now hopefully they can parlay this into their, you know, and follow their dreams. But, you know, it's the industry that's going to have to be responsible. And it's, you know, eventually down the line, you know, who knows? I mean, hopefully trans, we can have cis people playing trans and trans people playing cis, but we're at a place in history right now where I think, you know, there's an ethical choice that has to be made. And also remember, take into the account the unemployment rates, you know, amongst trans people. You know, you have the unemployment rate is double that of the general population. Trans people of color face 4 times the rate of unemployment. So isn't it just the right thing to do if you have a trans role in your film to seek out trans people? So I'm trans talent. So
awesome.
That's how I see it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Also, this is unrelated. What did you edit the movie on?
Oh, Final Cut 7, and then it was colored on Resolve. So it's, so I love the colors. Unfortunately, that can't happen anymore because I guess now that we move into 2K and 4K, we have to figure out, I mean, Final Cut's a thing of the past.
Yeah. I love the saturated colors, though. That's my favorite part of the movie. So.
Thank you.
Anyways, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Alex. I'm a theater major here at the university. I just was curious about, I mean, you talked a lot about how you use, or you allow for a lot of improvisation, and it seemed like you allowed that to happen with the environment a lot too. Is that, I guess it's a 2-part question. Is that true, and how much did you allow for, you know, like just random pedestrians to come in and out of your shots? Was that a problem, and how did you work with that, I guess?
Okay, yeah, it's true. There was a lot of improv behind the camera as well. And we were in locations that we sometimes owned. We never owned. We permitted for, and we had permission to shoot there, but we did not own. And we didn't announce that we were shooting. So, for example, we learned this way of filmmaking through 2 other films I made, Takeout and Prince of Broadway. Takeout was a film I co-directed with Chi-Ching Zhou, who plays Mama San actually in Donut Time. She's the one behind the counter. She's one of the producers of the film. So she, together we made this film called Takeout, in which we shot in a Chinese takeout restaurant on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We didn't have enough money to own it, to close it down and shoot in there. So we told them that we would never interfere with their business. We would shoot around customers. We would be as clandestine as possible. And we would shut down, we would stop shooting if the shop became too crowded, or we were getting in people's way, or somehow interfering with business. So, but it all turned out great with Takeout. We actually learned a way of like stepping back and not interfering, and we continued to use this method. So with Donut Time, they were generous enough to give us their place for $800, which was a steal, to shoot there for 2.5 nights. And also, if you think about it, Donut Time became such a people referred to it as almost a character in this film. So for $800 to get that was quite wonderful. And I have to say that my producers really, my Darren Dean and Chi-Ching Zhou, they both, to pull that off in Los Angeles is very difficult, because LA is an industry savvy town. They know that they can charge. But they got away with $800 for Donut Time. The Mexican restaurant was free. Hamburger Mary's was free. And basically, okay, so I know I hardly answered your question. I'm so sorry. Let me answer your question.
Okay.
Basically, we shoot, and we have producers and PAs ready to run after people who are caught on camera and who are identifiable on camera, because in the US you have to get releases for people for their image to be on in a film or television show. So basically, the only time that really proved to be difficult was when she was at the bus stop, waiting for the bus to come in and smoking a cigarette. And that was the bus open, and all those people came out, and we had to basically be taking notes, guy with the Compton hat, blah, 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 and then as soon as I yelled cut, we had 3 people running in every which direction, catching everybody, saying, would you please sign this release for us? We're making a small independent film. And thank God we got everybody who was recognizable. Now, that sometimes backfires. But the reason I do it is because to try to pull that off in a way in which you're setting it up and you have, extras. It would cost thousands of dollars to do that. So we're taking the risk of perhaps losing the shot or having to blur somebody out or black bar somebody. But it's a risk that I think is worth taking, and it's necessary on this budget. The one time it screwed us over was we were on the bus and we were shooting a scene with the 3 women, and there was some guy who was very visible in the foreground. He was actually half of the frame. Imagine the frame, like he was literally here and the girls were back here. And as soon as I yelled cut, I leaned forward and I said, "Sir, thank you so much for not looking at the camera. We're making a small indie. Would you sign this release?" And he said, "Yeah, for $400. Or I think he may have said $400 or $800. I forgot how much, but no matter what it was way out of our budget. And I said, "Oh, would you reconsider please $20? And then he said $380, and I said $40, and he said $360. And so I could see he wasn't getting anywhere where I could afford him, and we had to lose the shot. And at the moment we were devastated because it was such a great take, and Kiki performed this wonderful rap. She was like rapping, and it was very funny. And but in the end, we didn't need it. We got it. But at the time we were very upset. But it was one of those things where, yeah, you have to take that risk. And so that's about, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I was just like, there was a couple of scenarios or like situations that came to mind where that happened, and it just like it seemed like it could have been directed, but at the same time it felt so real, like with the guy on the longboard and they make like a little comment about him.
Oh, on the skateboard. That was real. We didn't expect that. He came out of nowhere. He flew by us, and Kiki said that wonderful line about Lil Wayne.
Yeah.
That just shows the type of, comedic improvisation skill that she has.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Really great movie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Who's next?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, I'm Evan.
Hey.
Really great movie. Enjoyed it a lot.
Thank you.
I guess I just wanted to ask, if you had any advice for young filmmakers like us, how to get into the industry, or how to get started. What would be your best advice for us?
Oh boy. Well, I always try to stay away from advice because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. But I would say the biggest thing, and the thing that I've seen just across the board for years, is that the industry is not going to just invite you in. You have to make an impression enough where they then want you. And I've seen this with not only directors and writers, but I've seen this with actors. I mean, if you look at the examples of people like, Sylvester Stallone and Lena Dunham and even Vin Diesel, Vin Diesel, they made their own movies first, and then they got attention. Nobody knows that about Vin Diesel, but he made a little movie called Stray Dogs, I think. And then that went to Sundance. It never even got distribution, but it's what got him into Saving Private Ryan. So it's like, that's what you have to put yourself out there. You have to make something. And thank God, we're in a time where it's much easier to make something. It's much cheaper. And there are so many different outlets. I mean, I'm also one of the creators of a comedy television show called Greg the Bunny, which was an Avenue Q-like puppet show. And it had several incarnations over the years. It went from IFC to Fox, IFC to MTV. But the way that we got recognized and discovered in the beginning was on YouTube, not YouTube, I'm sorry, public access, which was like pre-YouTube. Now you have YouTube, you have Vine, you have all these other ways of Instagram, where you have all these other ways to get attention. And trust me, the industry is looking at those things. They watch Vine, they watch Instagram, they're looking for talent, they're looking for YouTube, webisodes. So there's ways of getting your stuff up there. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You can shoot on the iPhone, as and you can, and especially at your age and where you are, you can ask for favors. That's the great thing. You can ask for favors, and there's a lot of people around you who want to work as well. And you get to my age where you you run out of favors. So, you know, take advantage of that. Make your first film in which everybody's working for free and just for the passion of it. And film festivals, and Duane will speak to this, you know, film festivals are the way of getting attention. They still work as a way of, if you're interested in cinema, that is the way of making the biggest splash. And then also I have to say, there's this other Vimeo, the staff picks on Vimeo right now, that's getting a lot of attention too. You put out a short film, and if you're lucky enough to have Vimeo give you a staff pick, you will probably get some calls from agencies.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I guess I'd also just like to ask how you got started. You know, what was?
I went to NYU to pursue, you know, I studied film and television there at Tisch. I was lucky enough to land a job right out of school at a publishing company that put me in their AV department. And so I was, you know, very tech savvy. I was shooting basically all of their promotional videos. So I understood how to shoot, light, and edit. I think that's very important, by the way. I think everybody, you know, out there in working in this industry has to have some command of some technical skill, right? So because that can support you over the years. I've had to, you know, rely on my editing jobs over the years and to pay rent. But anyway, so I was working for this publishing company. I was lucky enough, they wanted to do a small commercial for one of their books. Never even aired, but they allowed me to direct it, and I pushed for making it really high production value. At the time, it was in the 90s, and I shot it on Super 16. It looked glossy, it looked beautiful, and that's what got me in the door with other companies that wanted commercials. I started making little, you know, $40,000 commercials and shooting them for 20, so we could pocket 20, and eventually we put enough money together to buy a lot of raw stock to make my first film, 4-Letter Words. And while 4-Letter Words was in post-production, that's when Greg the Bunny sort of just dropped out of the sky. My friends and I were fooling around with this puppet and shooting stuff and putting it on public access. And that's when William Morris saw it, and the next thing you know, we were on IFC. So it's just weird. You never know how things are going to work out and where things are going to take you. But yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Cool. Well, good luck. Good luck.
Oh, man, he's waiting. What are you doing? Sitting in the back. Somebody can beat Nick. Go up there. And if you have a question, just come up to the front.
How's it going? My name's Nick. I had a couple questions, just more or less dealing with using the iPhone.
Sure.
What did you guys use to kind of stabilize it? Was it just all handheld? Did you invest in some of the rigs and lenses that they make for it? And then my next question will deal with the audio, with recording audio.
Sure. So we shot on the iPhone 5S, which did not have an internal stabilizing, did not have an internal stabilizer. This 6S Plus has one, so you might not even need a stabilizer these days. But we use this smoothie, which is made by Steadicam and Tiffin, and it's actually really great. If you can balance it right and you practice it, it really does a lot. It gives you the Steadicam look. So we use that. It's $150 on eBay. We used an anamorphic adapter that fits over the iPhone lens. I wish I had one in front of me here. Is that one right there, Sam? Or is that? No. Yeah, if you have, yeah. Basically, it's an anamorphic adapter that fits over the iPhone lens and allows you to shoot in true scope. So we didn't crop this film. It was actually, when we captured it, everything looks squished, and then you pull it out in post, the way that real anamorphic is done. And what was your other question? I'm sorry.
So you did end up using some tools there, and then how did you guys pull off the audio? Did you send that directly into camera, or did you?
One more tool, actually. It's called Filmic Pro, and it's an app.
Okay.
And there are several apps out there right now, but Filmic Pro was the one that we used, and it allows you to shoot at 24 frames a second, and it has all bells and whistles that you need. It has a higher quality compression rate, etc. This is the where is it? Okay, this is the anamorphic adapter. So this is all it was.
Okay.
It wasn't this big rig. It actually fits right over the iPhone lens like that.
Cool.
So that's basically it. And then yes, audio. Audio is so important. I mean, you know, audiences can be very forgiving with the visual, because, you know, it's often the director, just the director's own aesthetic. You know, it's like if they want it to be grainy, it can be grainy. If you want it to be saturated, it can be saturated, or shaky, etc. But audio is something in which, if you give an audience poor audio, or they're not getting lines, they're really going to see it, feel that this is an amateur production. And so it was very important for me to have this sound recorded professionally. And we used the guy that I used on Starlet. His name is Iron Strauss. He's wonderful. He's a one-man show. He understands my style, in which it's very run and gun. And he was great. I mean, when he could, he was using the Sennheiser shotguns, but a lot of the times he had to resort to lavs. But even his lav work sounded wonderful.
Yeah.
In Donut Time, which actually had like a refrigerator humming the entire time, and all of those, you know, with all the refrigerator
industrial fans.
It was so loud in there, but at the same time, he really isolated all of these tracks. I said to him, think Robert Altman, because I want every person in here mic'd separately so that I can play with levels and post. And he did. I mean, and it was funny because I edited in chronologically. So when I got to that scene about 4 or 5 months later, I was hearing lines for the first time that I didn't even know were there. And I was able to play with it. It was really, he did a wonderful job. And so I highly suggest always taking audio seriously. And what we did was that he recorded on his digital unit, gave me the files, and we sunk it up in post.
Cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Hector.
Hey, Hector.
Hi. My questions are actually kind of away from the technical side and more to the creative aspects of your movies, because I honestly love all the stories and all the characters you bring in, like especially in Prince of Broadway.
Oh, thank you.
But like you said in Tangerine, it was mostly based on location, and I know you also in New York is also like kind of based on like a certain place you want to shoot.
Yeah.
Do you ever go into those locations with an idea set in mind, like with like knockoff handbags or like prostitution, or in like Starlet with porn industry, or is it just most like along the way?
Locations are usually known for those things. So, for example, with the wholesale district of Manhattan, it happened to be an extremely chaotic area at the time that was full of eye candy and ear candy. So there was that element, but we knew what was going on there. We knew that counterfeit goods were being sold on the street and in back rooms. And so we knew that was eventually going to become the story. We just had to explore it. So it was this location that had this thing going on. Same thing for Highland and Santa Monica. Same thing for Takeout, in which we knew that, the route of this, Chinese restaurant delivery guy was going to, show us Manhattan. Less with Starlet, because Starlet, even though, we knew it had to take place in the San Fernando Valley, but we started with our concept and with our idea, an intergenerational friendship in which the younger woman was in the adult film industry. So just that alone made us, we had to, I'm pointing that way because that's where the valley is. But we knew it was going to have to take place in the valley. And the new film I'm working on takes place in Kissimmee and Orlando, down in Florida, because of a situation that's going on there in which families are living in motels outside of Walt Disney World. So again, it's like the situation that's happening in a particular location.
Yeah. My next question kind of has to do with more like with story. And in Prince of Broadway, the filming was really like kind of documentary styled, and in Starlight it was really static, and in Tangerine it was kind of a mix of both. And you said you're more of a fan of run and gun, so when do you know when to film it a certain way, a certain like angle? And
you know what, that's really hard to answer. Really, it is, because it's I think maybe the budget was partly responsible for Takeout and Prince being so docu-style, because you can get away with more with docu-style. You can literally be running and gunning. You're saving money you're saving money because you don't have to light. You're saving money because things can be a little grittier and lo-fi. So the money sometimes dictates the style. But then also, you know, I think this next film of mine is going to be very much more along the lines of Starlet, you know, more along, you know, lockdown. We're shooting on film, so that dictates a lot too. We won't be moving the camera as much, and not because we can't, but because I don't feel like it this time. I don't feel like going crazy. It's going to be a less hyperactive film, and maybe it's just because of, there's so many reasons. Who knows? Maybe it's because of what I've been watching recently, or the mood I'm in, or the age I'm at. I don't know. But and also, you know, but I do have to say one thing. Tangerine had a weird thing about it. Tangerine there was something in the style that was dictated by the location. And I didn't even really fully recognize this until I was in post-production. And I think it's there's a nervous energy about Tangerine, and it's because that corner is not the safest corner in the world. When we shot there, you know, Chris Brigosh, my co-screenwriter, had his wallet stolen on the second day of shooting. So, or the first day maybe. I mean, it was wild. So there was that nervous energy that I think somehow got caught on camera. And then when I was in post-production, I was looking at all of this saying, oh boy, this is a lot more energetic than I thought it was originally. And it needs music, and it needs a pulsating beat. And that's really what led to it having such a crazy soundtrack. So it really, sometimes the location and the actors and just the story really dictate style too.
okay, and my last question kind of has to do with the actors. A lot of your actors are people of color, a lot of kind of like first time. Did you kind of initially have a thought of like making the actors a certain race, or was it just kind of like based on talent? Or
it's usually the story. Well, it depends. I mean, the stories that I've been telling up to this point are about realism, you know. So you're trying to be accurate in terms of demographics. And I would like to start getting away from that, actually. I would like to start, that's why I think if you look at the films that we're doing, they're sort of, they're moving towards universal themes. So hopefully down the line, you know, diversity can be worked into my films organically and naturally, and it won't have to be totally based on what, you know, accuracy of a demographic. But to tell you the truth, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I try not to analyze my films too much, because if I do, I feel like I'm going to get too contrived. And it's only been late. It actually really is Tangerine in which people have then said, look, there's a pattern with your films, you know? And so I'm becoming aware of it at the same time that I think other people are.
well, I'm a big fan, and thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm a cinema student here at UVU, and really enjoyed your film.
Oh, thank you.
So my question is around like, I really liked how your characters seem to have all like different personalities, and I had an experience recently where I had to direct something, and it kind of just fell flat on its face, but because I was struggling with making the characters more three-dimensional. And so I was just wondering, like, how did you get your characters to have like a 3 dimension, just something that they all have their own different personalities? Like, did you write character bios, or was it just based on their personality, or?
Sometimes it's also the actor. It depends on how much work the actors want to put into it too. Like sometimes actors like Mickey O'Hagan, who played Dinah, my God, she created a whole backstory. We talked about how she just left Vegas recently because Dinah was upset at her last pimp she had in Vegas, and she decided to like come to LA to start a new. I mean, we had this whole thing going, and then James Ranson had less of that. He just wanted to show up and do it, and so it really depends on the actors and how much they're willing to put in, and I'm always there to be there with them. Now, I think character is very important, and I actually sometimes, when I'm being asked about 3-act structure and arcs, etc., I sometimes say I'm not as interested in that as I am just in character. I mean, if there's like a character who has a really cool little some very interesting quirks, that stuff that interests me. That's the stuff I want to see on the big screen.
Do you ever find like with like rehearsals or something, like if a character does something, then to like, oh, let's try that in a scene, or?
All the time. That's going on all the time. Even when we're shooting, there's a constant back and forth. Sometimes I'm actually even talking to my actors from behind the camera, and then we just cut my audio out. It's like there was a scene in Starlet in which you have Stella Maeve, Dree Hemingway, and James Ranson on the couch playing video games and just having a very irrelevant conversation, and that I was part of that conversation. I was the fourth member of that conversation behind the camera, but I was simply just like throwing them new ideas, throwing them, if I heard something that, and Chris was there as well, and if there was something that, a good line that was like 70% to a great line, we would try to then say, hold, let's rework that. Okay, say this, and so there's that. But on character, that's usually, to tell you the truth, character is usually, it's almost always determined beforehand, and how much it's actually based on the person's persona. It's really about the individual actor.
Great. And one last question. I'm just curious. Was there any particular films that you kind of looked to while making this film, like any inspiration, or was it just merely just like you were just making a film and it was mostly the location that inspired it? Or?
Yeah, this one has less, oh boy, I think direct inspiration or direct influences than my other films. This one was way more about like just whatever, let's just try something new, experimentation. Let's throw something, throw it against the wall and see what sticks, that sort of thing. With all of my films, there's always, you'll always see Mike Leigh in there. You'll always see Ken Loach. You'll always see, who else? Von Trier. You always see these filmmakers somewhere in there. I mean, you know what, to tell you the truth, probably Mike Leigh, mostly with this film, because the whole climactic ending at Donut Time was definitely inspired by his work, Secrets and Lies and Life is Sweet, in which it's an ensemble cast that all comes together in a singular location and then reveals secrets and lies. So, that's something that I say with this film, probably Mike Leigh. And it was really nice, and it was nice to show the film in London, in the BFI, at the BFI, and to tell you the truth, I think our film did the best there, and so that felt nice. It felt nice that the English audience is connected with it.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your time. Really enjoyed your film.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you.
Can you hold up for 2 more questions, Sean?
Sure.
Hi, I'm back. Sorry. Well, you actually kind of answered my question just barely. I was gonna ask, what your like favorite filmmakers were, because you mentioned Robert Altman. And then like in addition to that, like what are some of your favorite movies that you think that we should watch and study?
Well, I think that, you know, there was a movement from almost 20 years ago now, the Dogma 95 movement, which I think is very important. And if you can track, and feel free to write me on Twitter or Facebook if you can't find it. But
I've seen a couple of them by like Von Trier and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. The Idiots, I think, is amazing. And I think that is the quintessential Dogma 95 for me. But, you know, it just proves that it really does come down to content over, you know, how you're actually capturing the content. And this is something that I'm still bad with, and I'll be bad with my entire life, because I was born at a time when everything was celluloid and I was used to seeing, this is how we see film. Then Dogma 95 came around and it liberated filmmakers. It allowed many people with no budgets to make films, and that was so important. But at the same time, there's always that other side of you that wants to, you know, to capture the beauty of celluloid. So but anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent again. But I have to say, the Dogma 95 movement, of course, check out Cassavetes. Check out just the major, of course, there's the big movements in cinema that were very important. You know, the Italian neorealism, the French New Wave, the British social realism. I think that these are real. And then, of course, the American, what do they call that, Duane? I'm sorry, or maybe the new American,
New Hollywood.
New Hollywood of the 60s, early 70s, very important. You know, that's where there was just so much innovation. So
awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm a film major here as well. You mentioned earlier about your soundtrack and how it's different, and I might watch it again just so I can Shazam some of the songs that you placed on there.
You can just Spotify the whole thing, by the way. But
how did you find the music? Like, were they music that you listened to, or were they inspirations from your actors? Or
no, that's the crazy part about it, is that I told my producers they didn't have to budget for music. I thought this was going to be one of those types of films. I made, as I mentioned, Takeout before, that didn't have one note of music in it. And this time I knew I was going to have, obviously, Toyland, because she performs it, and I wanted this rendition that was throwing us back to, you know, the short comedy films of the early 30s. You know, the Our Gang comedies, Laurel and Hardy. If you can actually see that poster, that's where it comes from. Toyland comes from that Laurel and Hardy film, which is also, you know, Babes in Toyland and March of the Wooden Soldiers. That's the German version. They called it Revenge is Sweet. But that was really the only track I thought I was going to have in the film. And I got up to that point where I was editing chronologically, and Cindy, the character of Cindy, tears out of Donut Time. And I thought, oh, am I going to have to rely on just location sound for this? Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to enhance the sounds of the city? Am I going to create something like a sound? I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought I was just going to have to layer sound effects, and I knew it wasn't right. There was something that was telling me in the footage that there was a beat, or, you know, a tempo, that this was demanding some sort of score. And that night, it was just one of those great things, you know, this serendipity thing where that night I happened to be, at the time I was addicted to Vine. I was watching a lot of Vine videos, and there's this one Viner, her name is Wolf Tyler, 19-year-old Viner out of New York, and she posted 6 seconds of trap music, and that's the actual track that's in the music. In the movie, sorry. The one with the gunshots, you know, in the beginning, as she storms. And I just, when I heard this, I thought, oh, that's the sound of this movie. This is really just, this is the right style. And I found that track by doing my research on some message boards, and then I found it on SoundCloud. And what's great about SoundCloud, and I have to tell you all, you know, you're all filmmakers, SoundCloud is a phenomenal tool for the independent filmmaker, because you can find tracks on there that are original and don't have any samples. And then there's always that contact artist little tab over on the right, and you can just reach out directly to the artist. They're usually not signed, and negotiate a price. And that's exactly what happened. Once I locked that track down, then that sort of dictated how I was going to find my other track. I was using SoundCloud, and every night that I would get to a scene, I would assess the vibe of the scene, look for appropriate music for it, reach out to the artist to see if they were even interested in licensing the music, and hope that I would hear back from them within 24 hours, so that I would not get too married to their music, but I would be cutting the scene to that music. And I think we got almost every track we wanted, minus maybe like 2 tracks. So we paid every artist approximately $100 to $200 each, because that's all we could afford. But you know, we told them that, you know, hopefully the film gets out there, the Duplass name is on it, and hopefully it leads to exposure. And the wonderful thing is that we pulled off the soundtrack for about $1,500, and now it's on iTunes. You can get it on, you know, iTunes, Spotify, everything. And these artists are actually finally making money off of this as well. So they get money if you pay for the soundtrack, they get points. So it worked out in everybody's favor. There is one other website I should mention, musopen.org, musopen.org, and it's all public domain, and I've triple checked it, so it's fine. That's where I found the Beethoven track that we use as she's outside the subway station. And when I edited that scene, that sort of told me I could be more eclectic. I didn't have to stick right to trap. I could go classical, electronica, Brazilian belly dance, jazz, whatever was appropriate for that. Because there was so much culture clashing in the movie anyway, that we thought, let's just do that, you know, in the style of the film as well.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. That's cool. Now I know what sites to go to for my short film.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Excellent. Good luck.
Thanks.
Well, Sean, thank you for staying up late and entertaining us and making a great movie.
You got it. Anytime.
This has been great. Thank you so much. And everyone give him a big round of applause. And so you know, I don't think you know this, Dave Boyle and I, with Surrogate Valentine in 2010, had a trans woman playing a cis woman in that, Calpurnia Adams, kind of famous one too. That,
nice.
Beat you by a little bit, but not too much.
Yeah, no, that's definitely ahead of the game. So that's very cool.
Anyway, talk to you later. Thank you so much. It's been a great week of Sean Bakerism, so I appreciate it. So.
All right. Thanks so much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.